The hotel room that should have been locked forever. The knocking wouldn't stop. It was soft at first, like fingertips against wood. Steady, patient, deliberate. Then louder. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. Daniel held his breath, staring at the faded brass numbers on the door. 217. The camera in his hand trembled as its red recording light blinked. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No voices. Only that slow, rhythmic pounding from the other side of the door that should have been locked forever. He'd tried walking away earlier, but every time he reached the elevator, the sound followed, echoing faintly through the vents, like the room was calling his name. Now, it was 2:17 a.m., and something inside him whispered that he had to see what was behind that door. He pressed his ear close. A whisper met him from the other side. Not a word, but a drawn-out exhale, as if someone had been waiting years just to breathe again. When he finally twisted the doorknob, it gave way with a long metallic groan. A gust of cold air spilled out, colder than a hallway, colder than anything natural. His flashlight beam shook as he stepped inside. The room was perfectly preserved, yet wrong. Dust floated in the air, but the bed looked freshly made, its sheets smooth and untouched. The curtains hung closed, though the faint outline of morning light tried to leak through. On the nightstand, an old analog clock ticked backward. His camera began to glitch, the recording light flickering between red and dead. Then he saw the bathroom mirror. The reflection was darker than the room itself, like the light refused to touch it. Daniel lifted his flashlight toward it and froze. Someone was standing behind him in the reflection. The figure wore a brown overcoat and a fedora tilted low, just like the missing guest from the old photo Daniel had found in the lobby earlier that day. He spun around. Nothing. Only empty air. When he turned back, the reflection was closer, now standing right behind his shoulder, head slightly tilted, as if studying him. His breath fogged in the cold air. The whisper came again, this time from inside the room, not behind the door. It was faint but clear. "Why did you open it?" Daniel stumbled backward, flashlight flickering, and the bathroom light snapped on by itself. The mirror now showed 2 figures, both breathing out steam, but only one reflection blinked. He reached out, hand shaking, to touch the mirror's surface. The glass rippled like water. His fingers went through. The recording on his camera ended right there. Later, the hotel manager would tell police they found Daniel's camera just outside room 217. It contained one last frame before cutting out completely. His own reflection, eyes wide, a dark hand gripping his shoulder from behind. That night, the manager locked room 217 again, slid the key onto a rusted ring, and whispered under his breath, "Some doors were never meant to open." But before dawn, the knocking started once more. When the sun rose over a quiet stretch of highway, the old Redwood Pines Motel looked almost peaceful again. Birds circled above the faded roof, and the neon sign flickered half alive. Vacancy. But inside, the air was heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. The housekeeper, an older woman named Marla, was the first to notice Daniel's car still parked outside. She remembered him clearly, the polite young man with a backpack, tripod, and that wide, curious smile. He'd checked in alone, saying he was filming haunted Midwest hotels for his channel. Marla had warned him, half-jokingly, to avoid the second floor. "Those rooms up there don't like to be disturbed," she'd said. Now, as she knocked on his door, room 205, there was no answer. His bed was untouched, his gear bag missing. But the security feed told another story. When the manager, Harold Bates, replayed the footage from last night, the screen showed Daniel walking down the hallway at 2:13 a.m., holding his flashlight. He stopped at the end of the corridor, in front of room 217. The manager frowned. That door had been sealed for decades. On the screen, Daniel reached for the doorknob. Then the feed glitched. Static. Black. When the picture came back, the hallway was empty. Daniel never reappeared on camera. Harold sat in silence, tapping his finger against the desk. He'd seen something like this before, years ago, long before digital cameras and Wi-Fi. The last time that door had been opened, a man had vanished the same way. The police called it unsolved. Harold called it predictable. He went upstairs, key ring in hand, and stopped outside room 217. The maintenance sign still hung crooked on the door. He listened closely. No sound, no knocking. Still, he felt the same chill crawl up his neck that he'd felt the night they'd first sealed it. He whispered, "You're not getting anyone else." Then he turned the key just to check if the lock still held. It did. But when he started to walk away, he noticed something on the floor, a thin smear of black dust trailing from under the door toward the hallway. It stopped right at Daniel's room, 205. Later that afternoon, 2 state troopers arrived after Marla called it in. They searched the motel, the nearby woods, even the drainage ditch by the highway. No Daniel, no signs of struggle. Just his camera, found leaning against the wall near room 217, battery dead, lens cracked. As the officers questioned Harold, one of them paused. "You ever hear that knocking sound last night?" Harold looked up sharply. "What knocking?" The trooper glanced down the hall. "While we were searching the upper floor, I swear I heard someone knocking. 3 times. Came from somewhere near the end." Harold's face went pale. "You didn't open it, did you?" The trooper hesitated. "No, but the door handle was warm." That night, as the storm rolled in and the motel lights flickered again, Marla swore she saw a shadow move past room 217's window, even though it was sealed from the inside. And by midnight, the knocking had started once more, louder this time and impatient. The storm outside had grown into a violent roar, rain hammering the motel windows like angry fists. Power lines swayed in the wind, and thunder rolled across the forest that surrounded the Redwood Pines Motel. Inside, the only light came from the flicker of a single hallway bulb, one that buzzed faintly above room 217. Harold sat in his small office, the sound of static from the radio mixing with the storm. He hadn't told Marla, but ever since the officers left, the phone lines had been dead. The landline gave nothing but a low hum, and every time he tried to turn off the hallway lights on the breaker, they clicked back on by themselves. He poured himself a drink, hands trembling slightly. He had lived with his secret for years, that the room wasn't just haunted, it was cursed. He still remembered the first man who disappeared. 1968. Name on the ledger, Walter Hennessy. The man checked in, asked for a quiet room. Next morning, the maid opened the door and screamed. The sheets were soaked red, but there was no body, no weapon, no sign of forced entry. They sealed the room that same day, and now it had happened again. Thunder cracked so hard the walls shuddered. The lights flickered, and then, faintly, came the sound. 3 knocks. Harold froze. It wasn't the wind. It was that same pattern, steady, deliberate, echoing down the second-floor hallway. He grabbed his flashlight and the old keyring, his pulse drumming in his ears. As he climbed the stairs, the air grew colder. The storm noise faded until all he could hear was the faint creak of the floorboards beneath his boots. When he reached the top, the hall stretched longer than usual, unnaturally long, like the building itself had shifted. At the end, the maintenance sign on room 217 swayed gently, though there was no draft. "Daniel," he called out, voice low. "If you're in there, say something." Silence, then a whisper. "You shouldn't have locked it." Harold's flashlight flickered. He turned, scanning the corridor, nothing. But when he faced the door again, his beam caught a single wet footprint leading away from room 217 down toward the stairs. He followed it, slowly, until it stopped at the front desk. Sitting on the counter was Daniel's room key, perfectly dry, with a small piece of torn fabric looped around it. The pattern on the fabric looked old, like it belonged to a jacket from another era. Then came a faint buzz from the office monitor. The security feed flickered back to life. Harold leaned in, squinting. Camera 3, the second floor. The door to room 217 was open. His heart seized. He hadn't opened it. No one had. In the dim black and white feed, something moved inside the room. A tall shadow, human-shaped, standing motionless by the window. As Harold watched, the figure turned slowly toward the camera. The screen cut to static. A loud crash came from upstairs. Marla screamed from the lobby. "It's open again." Harold ran for the stairs, keys jingling, shouting for her to stay put. But as he reached the second floor, the hallway light went out completely, swallowed by the storm's darkness. From somewhere in the pitch black came Daniel's voice, faint and pleading, "Don't let it close." Then the sound of the door slamming shut echoed to the motel like a gunshot. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world gray and silent. The Redwood Pines Motel stood still under a thin layer of mist. No bird sang, no cars passed, just the hum of the vending machine in the lobby and the faint smell of rain seeping through the walls. Marla sat on the couch, clutching a damp towel. She hadn't slept all night. The power had come back just before dawn, but the lights on the second floor refused to turn on. Only the one above room 217 still glowed, steady and pale. Harold hadn't returned since running upstairs. She called out for him a dozen times, her voice cracking each time, but there was never an answer. When the clock behind the counter struck 7, she gathered the courage to follow. The hallway was longer again, impossibly long. The carpet squished under her shoes, soaked from the rain leaking through unseen cracks. As she neared the end, she saw the door to room 217 hanging slightly open. The brass numbers gleamed faintly in the morning light. "Harold," she whispered. No response. The air felt colder as she stepped closer. She could see her own breath now. Her hand trembled as she pushed the door wider, and the smell hit her, old wood, mold, and something else like ozone after lightning. Inside, the room was exactly as she remembered from decades ago, before it had been sealed. The curtains were closed, the lamp flickered dimly, and the clock on the nightstand ticked backward. Click, click, click. "Harold, are you in here?" The bathroom door creaked open by itself. Her heart pounded. She stepped toward it, calling again, but her voice came out weak. The mirror inside was fogged over, but there were handprints on it, 2 large, 1 small. And through the fog, she thought she saw movement. Then she heard the knock. From behind her, 3 sharp knocks on the inside of the room's main door. The same rhythm. She spun around, but the door was closed. From her side, there was no one. From the other side, something was there. She could hear slow breathing, inches away. The air thickened. The lamp buzzed violently and burst, glass scattering across the floor. In the darkness, a faint red glow pulsed from the corner of the room. Daniel's camera light, blinking. It was recording again. On the screen, Marla saw herself, standing alone. But behind her reflection in the lens stood 2 figures. Harold and another man in a brown overcoat with tilted fedora. Both were staring straight into the camera. Her scream was swallowed by the sudden slam of the door. When the police arrived later that day, the motel was empty. Marla's car was gone, but her cleaning cart sat outside room 217, a folded towel neatly placed on top. The camera footage they recovered showed only static, except for one short clip, a hallway door closing slowly by itself, followed by a faint whisper, "Lock it again." Weeks later, the motel reopened under new management. The second floor was declared off-limits due to renovation. Guests still report hearing knocks late at night. Some say they've seen a light flickering under the door at the end of the hallway, the one with the faded brass numbers barely visible beneath years of dust. 217. And if you listen closely enough, sometimes you can still hear the whisper. That room should have stayed locked forever.